The American dream. You know, it's one of the most powerful and, let's face it, persistent ideas in modern history. But what is it really? And what happens when we actually hold it up to the light? Well, today we're going to do just that. We're conducting a kind of literary autopsy, using the stories America tells about itself to dissect its most cherished myth. And this is where it all started, at least in name. Back in 1931, a historian named James Truslow Adams gave the dream its most famous definition. And this is the ideal, right? In its purest form. It's a promise of upward mobility that's not based on who your parents are, but on what you can do. It's optimistic, it's democratic, and it is incredibly seductive.
And this promise? It became a huge part of the American identity. I mean, it's the engine behind countless stories of immigration, of innovation, of just completely reinventing yourself. It's the idea that your future isn't written for you. You get to write it yourself. All you need is hard work and determination.
But, you know, that's the official story. That's the promise on the box. The moment you open up the great American novels, you find something, well, something way more complicated. It's more critical and, honestly, a lot darker. So what is the story that American literature actually tells about this dream?
Okay, so to really get the critique, we have to go back and look at the blueprint. The DNA of the American dream was coded long before Adams ever gave it a name. It's rooted in these early colonial ideals of, moral virtue and the rugged, self-reliant individual.
So here it is, the original formula, pretty much perfected by guys like Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography. It was laid out like this simple, almost mathematical equation. Follow these steps. Work hard, be a good person, save your money, and success wasn't just, possible, it was practically guaranteed. This became the operating manual for the self-made man. But that simple formula, it wasn't going to last. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, industrialization and all this new money started to mess with the equation. Suddenly the dream looked less like moral success and a lot more like just pure, unadulterated wealth. And this is when literature started to document the rot setting in just beneath that gilded surface. And of course, there is no greater literary examination of this than The Great Gatsby. I mean, Jay Gatsby is the ultimate believer. He follows the blueprint to a T. He reinvents himself, he gets ridiculously wealthy, all to achieve his dream. And that green light across the water, it's the perfect symbol for it all. A future that's always right there, always visible. But somehow, you just never get any closer. And this is why Gatsby's dream was totally doomed from the start. F. Scott Fitzgerald shows us that the dream smashes head-on into this rigid, unspoken class system. You've got the Buchanans with their inherited old money who are just careless and completely protected from any consequences. And then you have Gatsby with his flashy new money, who's always an outsider and in the end, totally disposable. All that money just couldn't buy him a ticket into their world. But for all those glittering parties, Fitzgerald really wants us to see something else entirely, the Valley of Ashes. It's this industrial wasteland between the rich suburbs and New York City, and it's such a powerful symbol of the moral and social decay that gets left behind in this reckless chase for wealth. It's basically the dumping ground for the consequences of the dream. So if the Jazz Age showed the dream was hollow, the Great Depression just completely shattered it. For millions of people, that simple formula, hard work equals success, was exposed as a total lie. Literature from this time starts to portray the dream not just as out of reach, but as a cruel bait and switch. And John Steinbeck gives us the ultimate story of this disillusionment. You have the Joad family, forced off their farm by the Dust Bowl, and they follow the dream west to California. They believe all the flyers promising work and a new life. It's the classic American frontier story, but played completely in reverse. But that promised land, it's a mirage. Instead of opportunity, they find a system that's literally designed to exploit them. Steinbeck shows how the dream was basically weaponized by corporate interests, the monsters, as he calls them, to lure in cheap labor. The Joad's individual dream of success is totally replaced by this desperate fight for collective survival and just basic human dignity. Then, after the war, the dream gets repackaged for life in the suburbs, and Arthur Miller gives us its most tragic figure, Willy Loman. Willy bought into the dream completely, the idea that being well-liked and a good salesman would guarantee success. But he's just an ordinary man who gets absolutely crushed by this extraordinary ideal. And this final judgment from his son Biff,
It's just devastating, because it suggests the dream itself, not Willy, was the fatal flaw.
So, for a lot of American writers, the problem wasn't just that the dream was flawed, it was that it was never even meant for them in the first place. A whole canon of literature popped up to expose the dream as this exclusive club, pretty much reserved for white men. This quote from Ralph Ellison's masterpiece, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it. How can you possibly achieve the American dream in a society that refuses to even see you as a full human being? The narrator, he tries to play by the rules. He gets an education, he works hard, but at every single turn, he's made invisible by racism. The dream isn't just out of reach, it's a cruel joke. And James Baldwin, well, he took this critique even further. For Baldwin, the American dream was built on a foundation of denial. Denial about the country's whole history of racial violence and oppression. He basically argued that the dream couldn't be real for anyone, black or white, until the nation honestly confronted that past. The critique also came from a gendered perspective. For writers like Sylvia Plath, the dream that was prescribed for women in the mid-20th century wasn't about professional ambition or being self-made. Nope. It was a bell jar of marriage and domestic life that often just suffocated personal aspiration and your sense of self. So, okay, after a century of being taken apart, critiqued, and exposed in literature as hollow or exclusive, or even destructive, why are we still talking about it? I mean, really, why does this contested ideal just refuse to die? Well, the answer, as literature shows us, is that the dream is a really powerful paradox. It survives because it's so flexible. It can mean wealth to one person, freedom to another. It still symbolizes this defiant kind of hope, even for characters like Gatsby who fails spectacularly. And at the end of the day, it creates the perfect dramatic conflict, capturing that huge gap between America's soaring ideals and its often harsh realities. And this isn't just some historical or literary debate. The critiques of inequality we see in writers like Fitzgerald and Steinbeck are more relevant today than ever. I mean, when you see a modern statistic like this, that the top 1% now holds 32% of the nation's wealth, it proves that the questions these novels raised about opportunity and class are the exact same questions we're still grappling with today. So ultimately, American literature doesn't give us a simple answer. What it shows us is that the dream isn't some finish line you cross. It's a constant, ongoing struggle, a battlefield where the nation's highest aspirations are always clashing with its deepest flaws. And that leaves us with the question posed by the great poet Langston Hughes, a question that just echoes through all of these stories. What happens to a dream deferred, a dream that's delayed or denied? Does it dry up, or does it explode? Literature, it doesn't give us the final answer. It just insists that we never, ever stop asking the question.